Well, I'm back this evening with the Hoonicorn. I brought it out to get the Polar Run vinyl on yesterday, so that went pretty well, along with a couple little sponsor decals. I should have the main hood graphics, the windshield banner, and the quarter flank vinyl from Blunt Tech pretty soon, probably within the next week or so. Got the Bimmer World banner on there. Tonight, I was noticing this thing was running a little bit rough at times, so I went and bought some cheapo spark plugs. I'm just going to throw those in for fun, because who knows? The rough running could also be because of something like this, and probably is, but the plugs are of unknown age, so we're going with that. So normally on an M50 there's little plastic covers covering those 10mm bolts, but since there isn't on this car, all you gotta do is, probably grab a ratchet, take those two little nuts out. They're both over torqued in this case, and then take off the oil cap. And then that plastic piece just lifts right off, gives us access to the spark plugs. So once you have the garnish off, you can see your 6 ignition coils. Looks like this has only had one of them replaced in 231,000 miles. These are just 10mm nuts, 2 per coil. Very, very easy. And then to take off the electrical plug, just do that and then lightly pull away. Do that for all 6 coils. Set them aside. You do not need to remember what order the coils are on the engine from. They are universal. So there you have it. If those little coil retaining nuts were on properly, you should be able to get them on and off with just a non-leveraged handle. So there you can see all 6 of our spark plugs. Valve cover on this is in surprisingly good condition, not leaky, which is amazing given how long this car sat before I got it. But here we have a 16mm deep socket. I'm in the basement, so the tools are limited. Ideally, you want a few more extensions than this, but this'll do. Crack them loose, wind them out, and take a peek at them. They're probably going to be pretty hot if you just drove the car like I did, so be careful. So, now that those are out, I realized that only 2 of them were actually tight, and they're the worst plug ever. Bosch Platinum 4. So, pardon the focus, this is going to be tough. Just a garbage spark plug, and it's clearly well past its prime. Those are borked, so those have probably been in there more than 100,000 miles, and those plugs are notoriously really not good. So this thing should run like a dream with those $1.99 Autolite copper cores. So I'm just gonna pull all these off of the engine here. These are extremely hot because exhaust gas actually getting out of the combustion chamber through these ports, which is a consequence of not having tightened the spark plugs. These were probably installed with a reasonable torque, but these crush washers, you do have to set them, and a lot of people don't know that, so they probably just snugged them in, and over the years, the heat cycles just loosened them right up. Plug number 1 and 2 were okay. Those are the coldest, but the back of the engine gets quite a bit hotter, or at least stays quite a bit hotter. No airflow from the front, and also the coolant temperature gets hotter as it gets to the back of the cylinder head. So, casual Ferrari. Here are the best plugs money can buy for this engine. When you're choosing a spark plug, especially for an engine like this, it really depends on what your goals are. If you want it to last 100,000 miles, start and run every time, and be okay, I would recommend you get something like an NGK Iridium. If you want it to last like 60,000 miles, I'd recommend a Platinum. The plug is going to be a little bit better performance than an Iridium, but it's not going to last quite as long. And then if you want to change them every 20 to 30,000 miles, I highly recommend a cheap copper core spark plug like this. These do have a gap. I don't have a gap gauge here, so I'm just going to chuck them in like this. It's a pretty wide gap, but it's also a normally aspirated engine, so it shouldn't be a problem. These should still run like a dream. There is a crush washer down there. You have to thread that on the threads first, but thread that on, drop the spark plug in gently. I know last time I showed you guys me doing that on the Ferrari, you all had a coronary, but it's totally fine as long as you're careful. The object is to just not drop it so hard that you flatten this out and close the gap. I've done it a few times and pulled them back up with a magnet just to check. Never changes, so as long as you're reasonable and it's not dropping a big distance, you should be okay. Once you have the plug hand threaded, we're going to go a quarter turn, and then another quarter turn, and you'll definitely feel some resistance. Don't push too hard because generally you're putting a steel plug into an aluminum cylinder head. You don't want to strip it out, but you also don't want this to happen and have them be loose. So at this point, I'm just going to throw the coils back on it, throw the hardware back on it, throw the beauty cover back on it, oil cap back on, and fire it up. Pretty easy job. See, it's up to temperature. She seems happy enough. Runs pretty well for 232K.